Purdue goes into a big one on Tuesday night. Uh, that'll be tonight for most of you listening, against their rival Indiana. Game in Indiana's first home game since their football national championship, and this is a Purdue team kind of coming in on a desperation spot. Losers are their last two on the road to UCLA and at home to Illinois, and this is a team not in free fall, but definitely in need of a win, especially if they're looking to keep pace at the top of the Big Ten, already 2 games back of the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Not going to be an easy rebound spot, though, as I go to Assembly Hall. I will be there. I'm excited. It'll be my first time in Assembly Hall. But this is a unique matchup. This is an Indiana program that has largely not been on Purdue's level for the last few years, but in the head-to-head matchup has. Got a 500 record against Matt Painter in Mike Woodson's era, and this is year one of the Darren DeVries era. So it's a new team build, a lot of 3-point shooting, a lot of 3-point variance, a team that hasn't been particularly great in conference play. What do you see from this matchup? What do you expect from this game?
This is a big spot for Purdue. You mentioned Purdue is, coming off an 0-2 week, tough road loss to UCLA, tough home loss to top 5-ish team in the country in Illinois. Nothing to hang your head about results wise, but definitely not a great way that happened, as we talked about in the recap. So be sure to check that out if you haven't seen it yet. But Indiana on their own right, they just won at Rutgers. Before that, they had lost 4 straight. Now those 4 came against Nebraska, Michigan State, Iowa, and Michigan. 4 of maybe the top 6 or 7 teams in the conference. So this is a continuation of a really tough stretch for Indiana. After they play Purdue, they go at UCLA, at USC, home to Wisconsin, home to Oregon, at Illinois, at Purdue. That's a brutal stretch for Indiana, and then they close home against Northwestern, home against Michigan State, home against Minnesota, at Ohio State. So there really aren't any breaks in the Big Ten schedule for Indiana, and that puts them in a pretty desperate spot, as if they wouldn't already get up for a big rivalry game at Assembly Hall when they're going to be honoring their national champion football team and everyone's favorite interview, Fernando Mendoza. There's going to be a little extra juice there with them knowing that if they want to make the tournament in Darren DeVries' first year, they got some work to do.
I'm going to have to ask you to monologue for a little bit longer, for another 30 seconds, because I just got a low power warning on my computer and realized my computer charger's in the other room. So I will give you 30 seconds and I will be right back.
While Joey goes and gets his power cord, I'll talk a little bit about this Indiana resume, because Indiana, their best win this year is probably against Washington. They got a 10-point win over Washington. They haven't really beaten anyone else who's even a bubble team this year. Their 4 wins in conference play have come against Penn State, Washington, Maryland, and Rutgers. The 3 of those, not Washington, probably the 3 worst teams in the conference, or at least 3 of the worst teams in the conference. So this is just a tough spot for Indiana to be in, needing a big win to boost their tournament resume and try and get back to 500 in the conference. But they don't have many good wins on their resume, and they have to try and get one against a Purdue team that is going to be desperate for a win. I mean, if Purdue goes 0-3 in this UCLA, Illinois, Indiana stretch, they can kiss the conference race goodbye. It only gets tougher from here. After Indiana, they play Maryland and Oregon, which you chalk those up to a pair of wins there. But then it's at Nebraska, at Iowa, home versus Michigan, home versus Indiana, home versus Michigan State, at Ohio State. This Purdue conference schedule is about to get a lot tougher than it already has been, and they need to start stacking some wins.
Yeah, for sure. This is a must win for Purdue, especially in the race of the Big Ten. I mean, Purdue right now is in danger of not even getting a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. They're currently sitting at 5th in the league, and there's 4 other top 10 teams in this conference that are breathing down their necks. So a must-win spot for Purdue. But let's talk a little bit about this Indiana team. This is a very unique matchup. I mentioned that Indiana under Mike Woodson was 500 against Purdue. Going to be a very different look of team than what you're used to under Mike Woodson. Indiana under Mike Woodson was very widely known across Big Ten circles for their lack of shooting prowess. This year's version of Indiana is about the exact opposite. Um, for all of the complaints Indiana fans had of Mike Woodson playing two bigs and running an archaic offense, Darren DeVries does not do that. He plays about three quarters of a center with a lot of shooting, and this team can certainly shoot the basketball. They take a lot of threes. They take over 50% of their shots from three. So as much as Purdue fans said Illinois attempted a lot of threes, expect even more out of this Indiana team, and it's going to be even more pronounced against this Purdue team that plays with a lot of size. It really starts and ends though with kind of the star wing in Lamar Wilkerson. I mean, that's the guy, that's the prize transfer they brought in. He's known for being a 3-point sniper, and not just being a 3-point sniper, but doing it on ridiculous volume. I mean, right now he's shooting 40% on 165 attempts already this year. So just ridiculous volume out of him, and that's the guy that's kind of going to be at the top of the scouting report and the main guy for Purdue to slow down.
Yeah, let's focus on the Indiana offense for a minute because that's the more interesting matchup in this game, with all due respect to a perfectly adequate Indiana defense. Um, Purdue's offense should get whatever they want against them, and we'll dive into that a little bit more in a minute. But this is one of the best shooting teams in the entire country in Indiana. Really, from all three levels, they're a great free throw shooting team, though they don't get to the line a ton, and Purdue is elite at avoiding fouls. So this probably won't be a big free throw shooting game for Indiana, but there's hyper efficient from 2 point range, top 20 in the country in 2 point percentage, top 100 in 3 point percentage. And you mentioned they take about half their shots from three. This is a team that likes to run and gun. They play pretty quick, and at least relative to Purdue, they're relatively slow, you know, across the country. But they're going to work to get open looks, and they're going to take them from three. And we just got done an Illinois recap where we talked about the looks that Purdue was giving up from three. That's been an issue really all season for Purdue, and they've been burned recently as teams are starting to make more of them. If Purdue is going to let Indiana get open looks from three, they're going to take them, and they're probably going to make it because they have a lot of guys who can make threes. Lamar Wilkerson is 40% from three. Tucker DeVries takes a lot. He's only 34% on the season, but he's been better in the past. He's a volume shooting forward who's going to be matched up on Oscar Clough or Trey Kaufman Wren, and we've seen those guys struggle to close out and contest shots against shooting bigs. Nick Dorn is 45%. Is he still out? I haven't seen.
I'm pulling up the Rutgers box score. He did play against Rutgers. He played 36 minutes, so I would take a wild guess and say he's healthy.
All right. I just saw that he had missed a couple of games recently and wasn't sure if he was
still out. He's back. He played 36 minutes against Rutgers. Tayton Connerway is kind of the guy to watch. He played 16 against Rutgers, but I believe he is out or possibly out for this game. He didn't start against Rutgers, which is kind of a warning sign. Definitely dealing with something. But yeah, you mentioned it. This is a one of the best shooting teams in the country, one of the best shooting teams in the Big Ten. And any time that you're dealing with a team that shoots that many threes and is that capable of a team, it's a dangerous game, especially when you're kind of live and die by the three-level defense. I think the thing is that this is a team that you could theoretically play high hedge against and not be super concerned about the bigs beating you from three.
Other than Tucker DeVries.
Yes, other than Tucker DeVries, of course. If you're going to let Tucker DeVries pick and pop, he's going to shoot 15 threes. And even though he's shooting 34% this year, I mean, this is a guy that he was shooting like 48% last year before he got hurt. He's always been a pretty solid efficiency guy, like 36, 37% while he's at Drake on really high volume. So he's a capable shooter, and if Purdue gives him open practice gym, shoot 3-point shots, he's going to knock a lot of them down. But guys like Reed Bailey, Sam Alexis, even a Trent Sisley, like those are the kind of guys I think that you're very comfortable with in a ball screen action, high hedging, and I think you feel okay with that if you're forcing the ball out of Wilkerson's hands, because I think, unlike Wagler, even though you have the shot making ability, you don't have the methodical, I'll carve up your defense, I'll make the right decision, I'll go create for others that a guy like Wagler or a guy like Dent has. And I think that's kind of where Purdue needs to make their money defensively is if you can turn Wilkerson into a passer, this Indiana offense becomes a lot less scary given that even though they only play the one big, they almost always are playing a point guard who's also a non-shooter.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. Wilkerson is their guy. He's averaging 19 and a half points per game, um, 2.5 assists to 1.5 turnovers, shooting 45% from the field and 41% from three. Most of Indiana's 3-point volume comes from three guys: Wilkerson, Tucker DeVries, and Nick Dorn. They're going to try and get those guys as many threes as they can, which I do think plays into what Purdue wants to do defensively. They're going to focus a lot of their defensive attention on those three guys in the perimeter and kind of let other guys get open looks, which can be a dangerous game to play against a lot of teams. With Indiana, it could be a winning success, a winning strategy. I mean, a lot of these guys are shooting sub 30% from three, Tatum Conaway, Reed Bailey, Sam Alexis, Trent Sisley, all sub 30%. Connor Enright, 33%. So if this is going to be a game where Purdue is going to try and, stick CJ Cox on Lamar Wilkerson like glue, high hedge, switch a little bit and make sure that guys aren't, those three guys specifically, Dorn, Wilkerson, DeVries, aren't teeing off from three, and force some role players to take some shots. This feels like the classic Purdue defensive strategy that we've seen them employ this year. It does feel like that's the best way to try to attack this Indiana offense.
Yeah, if this Indiana team I think is largely set up the way that Purdue wants, and that's with like three guys having all of the offensive volume. I mean, we've seen a couple of big Reed Bailey games, but they haven't really come in spots where that make me confident against like good high major bigs. And as bad as Purdue's bigs have been defensively recently, they still are good high major bigs. And especially like at a rebounding level, I think he's going to struggle rebounding. And I think there's a real world where Indiana's bigs also find themselves in foul trouble. They're going to be giving up a lot of size, going to be dealing with a lot inside. We'll kind of see how they're able to handle that because there's really only two bigs, in my opinion, on this team. I guess three if you want to count Sisley, but DeVries is a wing. I mean, Tucker's going to play on the perimeter. He's going to play the wing. Sisley plays a little bit of both. He's more of a wing than a post player. It's really Alexis and Bailey, and neither one of those guys is particularly dominant size-wise. This kind of reeks as a matchup of Purdue's bigs need to show up, and I think that for better or for worse, that's the case in a time period where Purdue's bigs haven't really played the best.
Yeah, I mean, this should be a game where Purdue's biggest feast, like you said. Indiana's a pretty solid defensive rebounding team, but they're not a good offensive rebounding team at all. And even on the offensive glass for Purdue, they should have an advantage there. This is one where Oscar Clough, Trekoff, and Wren need to assert themselves in the glass, need to assert themselves physically in the paint. I mean, this is the game to do that. Punish Indiana down low. They lack size, get some of their bigs in foul trouble. This is not a deep team. I can get a couple quick fouls and Tucker DeVries that will change the entire game. And like I said, on the other end of the floor, you can't be switching Lamar Wilkerson. He's just gonna shoot over anyone who's a step off of him. And he can go for 40 on any given night. Like this is a guy much like Wagler. You don't want to dare him to beat you by himself because he will. And if this becomes in Assembly Hall on National Championship celebration night, who's going to score more points, Lamar Wilkerson or Braden Smith? As good as Braden Smith is, that's not a game I would want to play against Indiana when there are much more solid ways to beat this team.
Yeah, that's a very dangerous game to get in, and it's exactly what Indiana's going to want to get into is Braden Smith versus Lamar Wilkerson in an ISO scoring contest because, for as much as Wilkerson isn't the player that Wagler is, like passing the ball and decision making wise, and just kind of carving up a defense, he's every bit, if not more, the scorer that Wagler is, and has been around the block long enough to know how to score in any situation. So it's going to be definitely one of those games where if Purdue dares Wilkerson to beat him, I mean, he might have 50. You give him 20 open threes, he's going to take 20 open threes. He's not a guy that's really looking to pass the ball a ton. And I think that's why the switching thing is such a dangerous game to play. It'll be interesting to see how Purdue covers it because I think while a lot of people have questions about DeVries, he's been a pretty good offensive coach for most of his career. And even those Drake teams ran some pretty good offense. Let's kind of switch into some gears. How can the Purdue offense attack this Indiana defense? Because I think for as good as the offense has been, it's 28th nationally. The defense is 57th nationally for Indiana. Both of these teams are offensive oriented teams. And much like Purdue, teams can kind of get what they want from 2 point range. This is not a great interior defense. The block rate's not very good. I kind of think Purdue can have a lot of success inside. What do you think?
Yeah, this Indiana team is one of the worst at forcing turnovers in the entire country. They're sub 300th in steal percentage. Purdue should take care of the ball against them and get good looks. This team has zero rim protection. I mean, they don't block anything. Even more so than Purdue doesn't really block anything. Indiana definitely doesn't. And Purdue should be able to punish inside. They should be able to get good looks from three. Indiana's defense is pretty good at preventing 3-point attempts, but they're going to have to collapse in the paint against Purdue's penetration, especially with their bigs. Because if this turns into Oscar Clough and Trey Kaufman-Renn going one-on-one with Reed Bailey and Sam Alexis, they're just going to bury him every single time. So they're probably going to want to divert extra attention to that. And if they do that, then you're leaving guys open on the wing, and you're letting Fletcher Lawyer and CJ Cox and Omer Meyer, Jack Benter just take open looks from three. And I think Purdue's offense should be able to really, really carve up this Indiana defense, kind of no matter how they want to attack. I do think, though, that it's going to start inside out in this game.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the KenPom kind of team sheet for this Indiana team, they don't exactly grade out as an awful 2 point defense, but I'm doing a fun little exercise called clicking the conference play only button. And you would not believe what happens. The Indiana 2 point defense, 2 point field goal percentage gets worse by 10%. They go from allowing 46% at the rim at 2 point range to 56%. This is a team that their defensive numbers on the interior are largely lifted by a pretty poor non-conference schedule. And I think once Big Ten play has started, you've started to see some of the better front courts expose this Indiana front court a little bit. I think just kind of, for lack of a better term, I mean, they can scheme up some ways to stop some physically not dominant front courts, but they get to the dominant front courts like Michigan and schools like that are much closer to what Purdue has personnel wise than the Incarnate Words of the world. And the 2 point defense hasn't really held up. The rebounding has not held up particularly great. And I think the defensive numbers are starting to take a hit from that. And that's kind of what you're seeing from this Indiana team, and why, as you said, like Purdue is going to make such a point, hopefully, of kind of pounding the ball inside.
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered at this point. There's not a ton this Indiana team does defensively that should frustrate Purdue's offense. They foul a decent amount. Purdue never gets fouled, so I guess it's an extremely stoppable force against an extremely movable object in that matchup. But we'll kind of see how that plays out on the road in Assembly Hall. I would not expect Purdue to get calls. We'll see if Purdue expects to get calls. If they're getting hammered early in the paint and Braden's not getting the calls he wants, we've seen that kind of spiral and the team kind of tank mentally. So I think it'll be important for them to stay focused and not let themselves get frustrated in a pretty hostile environment.
this team's 16th out of 18th in foul rate in in conference play. So we'll see how this interesting matchup of a team that's unable to draw fouls and a team that's unable to stop fouling kind of turns out. But Ken Pom has this as a 78-74 point win for Purdue. I believe that tracks with most betting markets, kind of right around that 4 point mark. How do you think this game goes? Do you think Purdue wins? Think they cover? What do you think happens here?
I think Purdue wins. I think they cover the four. Um, I think this is a very tough spot for Indiana, given how desperate Purdue is for a win. They should have a pretty sizable advantage on the inside, pun intended. And I don't think Indiana's offense is well suited to beating this Purdue defense. Now, Wilkerson could do the Wagler thing and go for 46 and drag Indiana to a win. He's certainly capable of doing that. And if Purdue's not going to let CJ Cox stay out in the entire game, I don't know if they're really going to be able to stop him. But we kind of talked about this earlier. Um, Purdue's defense tries to funnel shots to role players and hope they miss. And Indiana has a lot of role players you can funnel shots to, and they will miss. And I think it's just not a great recipe to beat this Purdue defense, which is very gettable, as we've discussed recently. But it does require you to either have a lot of bigs that you can really drag Purdue's bigs out of the paint with. I don't think they have those. And it requires you to have role players who are reliable shooters who make shots. And Indiana doesn't really have those either. So short of an out of body shooting experience from either Wilkerson or the Indiana role players, I think Purdue covers this. I think they get a win. It's going to be hard fought. It's going to be a tough environment. I don't think Purdue will run away by like 15 or anything like that. But give me Purdue like 82-74.
Yeah, I think this is a really tough ask for Indiana, especially with Conaway kind of being banged up as we talked about. I think this game goes in Purdue's favor. I think a lot of people were expecting a bounce back spot against Illinois. And as much as I think the spot favored Purdue, it was not a matchup that particularly favored a Purdue bounce back. And I think largely played out that way. I think this is a matchup that could favor a Purdue bounce back. I think this is an Indiana team that is largely been okay giving up open shots to teams. I don't think their defense has been particularly great. I don't think they're going to hold up on the inside at all against some of the better front courts, especially offensively. I think this is a game where we could see like Trey Kaufman rebounds back. I'm kind of that's my pick to click this game. I expect a big Trey Kaufman run game. I expect a little bit of a Clough bounce back as well. I'm just not sure there's a ton this Indiana front court can do to slow down Purdue. And if that's the case, I think this Purdue offense is just almost unstoppable. And I do think that this Purdue defense will have a couple answers against a much smaller gunned offensive team in Indiana than Illinois or even a UCLA, in my opinion. I think that's why I'm going to take Purdue. I think Purdue wins even by a little bit of a bigger margin than you said. I think this is the bounce back spot. I think they feel comfortable. I think we talked about Woodson having some success against Painter and him not exactly owning that rivalry. But I do think one thing about Woodson's teams is they usually had a feature of them that caused Purdue a lot of issues. I don't think this Indiana team really has that. And I don't think Wilkerson is quite the level of shot creator that you need to be to kind of beat this Purdue defense. So for that point, give me Purdue like 84-68. I think this is a close game for 30 to 35 minutes, and Purdue kind of opens it up a little bit down the stretch with a couple big shots. All right, everyone. I think that about does it for the Indiana preview. Thank you guys for listening. As always, we will be back right after, likely on Wednesday. We'll hit you guys back with a recap, so be sure to look out for that. And otherwise, enjoy the game, everyone.